Hello and welcome to the Snapdragon Studio YouTube channel. It's lovely to have you here. My name is Jane and today I am going to be talking about something that I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years, which I think might be a very general change. So I am 56 and I am, midlife plus. Most of my friends are kind of at that same stage. And I have noticed that over the past 5 or 6 years, we are having so many more conversations about spirituality. Now, I don't mean religion. It's not that all of my friends have found faith or taken back up with religion. Something different. It's something that is a knowing. It's something that is a connection. And I think that it might be something that is general to this crossing the border into midlife and beyond. And what really interests me is that this isn't a going out and learning things experience. It is a drawing in and knowing things experience. Because all of my life, I have been academic. I was one of those children with the flashcards at toddler group. I started school very early. I was very academic. I went right the way through school, and that was my thing. I learnt things and I wrote things and I got exams, and that is where I'm comfortable. And then, probably about 5 years ago, all of that changed. And bit by bit by bit, it wasn't just the outside learning that was important. It wasn't outside anything that was important. It was something inside me. Now, I've always been, I would say, probably vaguely spiritual. I have great connection to animals and to a sense of place. And that went kind of side by side with my job life. But the thing that has changed for me and for friends that I've talked to is that this is a connection backwards or outwards, not just to the plants and the animals that I can see here, not just to my garden and the weather that I can see here, but to something deeper. And I first started to be able to put this into words properly. The wasps are very keen on this topic. Around about 2022, I went to a wonderful exhibition at the British Museum. This is the catalogue, The World of Stonehenge. And it had gathered together all of these artifacts that had been found in graves or houses and things at kind of the time of Stonehenge. And they put together an exhibition. And it was a beautiful, wonderful exhibition. Went down to London to see it at the British Museum. And in that exhibition, there was a reconstruction of what a woman shaman who lived between 6,500 and 8,500 BCE. So just to grasp that length of time ago. But there was a reconstruction of what she may have looked like. And then, based on the case, they had all of the grave goods that were there. And it just stopped me in my tracks. I saw it from the other side of the room. It was, not surprising because it was spectacular. It's this kind of figure with a wolf head and bones and antlers. And this was an extraordinary woman who was almost definitely a shaman in what is now Germany. And she had been buried with all of these grave goods, all of these little bits of animals, talismanic bones and fur and things. She had been covered in red ochre and buried in a crouching position. And there was a small child buried with her. A small child that it turned out was buried there several hundred years later. So this shaman, this extraordinary woman, was so powerful that in a nomadic society, people returned 400 years later, approximately, with this baby to bury the baby with her. Such was her power. You know, they knew where she was. They opened the grave. They covered the child also in red ochre, put it between her thighs. Genetically related to her, but not closely. Just mind-blowing. Anyway, this exhibition, I saw her. I saw all of these grave goods, this jewellery, you know, ceremonial jewellery. And I felt a hum, a vibration. It was through that case, through the fact that these things have been, you know, exhumed and examined and scanned and whatever you do to date things, and were there in a different country, a different era, in a glass case, I could still feel the hum. And this was the first time that this had happened at all. And I went away from that exhibition just buzzing. And from that point on, I have been able to talk more about these things, to talk about the connections. So if you go back through the videos here, you'll see that I went down to Kilmartin, where there are lots of, and right about sort of like, the land has been settled at around about the same time. So there are cairns, there are standing stones, and then there are what I particularly feel a connection to, which is the cup and ring marks that are out in the landscape, like constellations carved into the stone. I have a whole video about going there and seeing these things. So I have been wondering, you know, whether this is a midlife thing, whether it is that women, particularly women who have worked within the society that we have, this patriarchal society that is all about outward show, it's all about achieving things and money and having things and scaling and climbing ladders and all of that kind of thing. I wonder whether women who have been in that society and maybe who have been successful in that society, you know, as I was, get to midlife and then suddenly realise that it's not about outwardness. It's not about everything that's out there. Life is actually about what is inside. So none of this spirituality has been about learning things. You know, I mean, obviously I will go and buy books and read them about shamans and cup and ring marks, but at the core, it's not about learning. It's not about going and doing courses, or it's not about acquiring things, it's not buying things. it is almost more of a recognition or a remembering, something that is already deep within us. And I think that that is amazing. And to follow it is brave and amazing and wonderful. And to realize that living a life, connecting to spirit, connecting to joy, to wonder, to having time to just be, is kind of the point. It's not actually about being a success in anybody else's eyes. It's about being in tune, feeling the hum, getting that feeling that you get when these cup and ring marks down fairly near Kilmartin, you can go and sit next to the stones that have them, and there's sort of like this big expanse of stones that is covered in circles and indentations and little marks, and it does look very heavenly. And you look out over that to the sea, and to sit there and see, now, not exactly the same landscape by any means, but to get a sense of being under a big sky and looking out to the water, and to know that we are connected back and back and back and back and back to these people. Just amazing. And I have found it very interesting that it has really affected my creativity. And very soon after we'd gone to Kilmartin, circles started appearing in my work. And after I'd been to a workshop with India Flint, we made a vessel. When I came back, I knew that it was going to be decorated with these circles, which turned out into these cup and ring marks. And I've been just drawn to them ever since. And I think that it's that connection, but it's also that they are kind of mindful sewing that allows me to still. It allows me to think and to connect and to, just calm and things. So I have been working on this thing, and it's called the Touchstone pouch. And I have made it, and it's like, I mean, you can see this. It's all just spirals and circles. I'm sewing them in hand-dyed threads, and this is onto quilted linen and wool. I have this idea that it should all be something that can go back into the earth once it's finished, and then making them up into these envelope pouches. I'll show you this. It's got a silk tie. This has got my oracle cards in it. Again, this idea of getting back to your intuition, to the things that you already know, because I believe we already know what we should be doing. It's just that the buzziness, this noise of society often brings us, like this. And it's very difficult in the crowd, the noise, to just still ourselves enough to know. So I have been making this pouch, here we are, to keep my oracle cards in. And I loved making it so much that I decided that I would make it into a little course so that people can make their own Touchstone pouches. And there is a pattern for the shape and all of the instructions for how to do the quilting and the embroidery and things, but there is no pattern for the shapes, because the idea is that you just start and you see where the line goes, and it can be spirals, it can be circles, it can just be wiggly lines going over the piece. So that course is free to members of the studio, and it is £47 is the introductory price to anybody else who would like to come along and make one of those. And that is up on the website now. But I would love to know, has anybody else found this just draw to a very internal spirituality as you grow older? And if so, how did you recognize it? Let me know in the comments. Until then, I shall see you next Friday. Bye bye.